This is the budget hearing for parking garages. We're joined by Councilor Driscoll, Councilor Thompson, Councilor Bay, Councilor Rudd, Councilor Allen. I am Councilor Green. So I'll turn it over to you guys. Introduce yourselves and go over the projections.
Thank you. I'm Corey Dunham, Chief Operating Officer for the city. This is Pat Monin. Do you guys, I don't know if you guys want to.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Pat Monin, who oversees our day-to-day operations in the garages, the garaging supervisor, and then Lori Ayako, who's the fiscal officer for the Department of Public Works. So, you know, it's parking garages are certainly in a moment of transition. I think, as many of you know, we were working with CIDA and a consultant to have a study done on our parking garages, and it's in a draft form right now. We're looking at some of the results that we got and deciding what the next steps are. So, you know, whether or not we maintain the way that we do things now, whether we pursue a different kind of management structure, we're looking at a lot of different things that are coming due around the same time. Obviously, credit cards, as Dave Del Vecchio has referenced, are being implemented in our parks, and we would love to see credit card machines operating in our garages. Is that something that infrastructure that the city would purchase? Is it something we would do through an agreement with an operator? Some of our operating contracts are coming up, and so we're really kind of reaching a point where we're going to have to make some big decisions. We're not there yet, so it's a bit of an awkward time for us to have a budget hearing, but we're happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Let's start with Councilor Allen.
Okay. Can you touch on a little bit of the parking garages over at the AXA?
Oh,
Where are we at with that?
what's going on at AXA?
Want me to start?
Pat can start, and Nora will probably
All right.
assist.
Okay.
AXA, of all the garages, is probably in the most transition. The garage, I believe, holds 540 cars. On a daily basis, it's pretty full. The garage suffers from age and a problem with a lot of water in the system. It's very, very difficult to operate anything in the garage, so we're always fighting the water because of the water in the ground. Every time it rains, we get more water in the garage. So it's very difficult to handle the sprinklers and any electrical. We always have problems with it. Last year, or this just past few months ago, we finished through CNS Engineering and Crane Hogan, a repair job, I'll call it, on the structures underneath in the basement and the sub-basement levels, the support columns for the most part. And they also worked on the expansion joints on Montgomery and Harrison, or not Harrison, Madison. That work has pretty much been completed. There is some work that's still going to be going on Montgomery that the county is going to do right along the War Memorial on the curb line there. And that's important because that sits right on it's the eastern wall of the garage as you go down. And it's important because that's a place where we're having a lot of leakage and a lot more water coming in. And so it's an ongoing problem. But that's what's happening with the garage. I hope it answered your question.
So as of now, it's still ours, or?
All that.
Yeah, I was going to ask somebody to re-explain that.
It's my favorite thing to do, Counselor. Nora Spilling, Deputy Commissioner, Neighborhood and Business Development. So the property transfer has not yet taken place. The financing that we have in place with Empire State Development, we're working through a couple of requirements in that document, one of which is a contingency that they cannot fund until the anchor tenant re-signs their lease in that facility. The anchor tenant is actively RFPing that site and other sites to evaluate their options here in Syracuse. We've had really positive discussions with them about their continued location here in Syracuse, but while that process unfolds, the funds are not available to us yet, so we can't move forward with the construction project. However, CIDA has, in the interest of keeping the ball moving on this, authorized a $525,000 contract with CNS to do the design work that is necessary before it could obviously go out to bid.
How much is the total? Sorry, go ahead.
Who's getting the revenue this month for the AXA garage?
The city is getting the revenue.
Are we sure?
Yes, it's a complicated, but yes, the city is getting the revenue.
Okay. Because there's a sign there saying to make your checks payable to SLDC, right?
Right, so at the beginning of the year, SLDC took over the contract for the management of the facility,
Okay.
and that's why.
How much is the overall project again? Sorry if I missed that.
The entire reconstruction, not only of the necessary work in the garage, the facilities, HVAC, fire safety, and then a complete reconstruction of the plaza is about $10.3 million. And as Pat noted, the plaza is a critical component of that project as it's the roof where a lot of our water seeps in from. So making that as watertight as possible is a primary objective here, as well as opening up the space, making it a bit more attractive as things progress on that side of downtown. Okay.
If I could add, and Nora, you can correct me, I was just whispering to Councilor Green over here. The earlier discussion that we had relative to the property transfer was based on the fact that the city didn't find it feasible to maintain the garage, and that a CLC had a greater potential and or ability to attract the money required for the repair of the facility, and that was the reason why we voted to transfer ownership.
Yeah, that's certainly part of it, and the other component was just speed to getting the work done. SLDC is a public authority. It does public bidding, but we can do that bidding in a little bit more rapid succession, and we thought that would be important not only for the retention of AXA, frankly, to see that speed. So still a very open and transparent process, but just a little bit faster.
All right, they better not go nowhere that was to do.
It's what?
So they better not go anywhere that was to do.
I have a question on page 342, the professional services line. There's a line item there for Haler, Fryer, and Kuhn. Can you just explain that one?
Yes. Haler, Fryer, and Kuhn just recently contracted with the city to park 120 parkers on a daily basis in the Fayette garage. That will bring that garage up to near maximum capacity, a very near maximum capacity. But we're looking forward to being able to provide that service to them.
But this is like an expense, right?
Oh.
That's the insurance.
Oh, it's our insurance.
But what Pat said is still true.
There you go. I'm sorry. I assumed I knew what I was talking about.
Well, that leads me to the question of the capacity of the garages. Do we know the capacity of the garages?
On an individual basis, I'd have to look into it for you. I could get those numbers for you quite quickly. The Fayette garage, as I just mentioned, is very near capacity with the addition of the additional 120 spaces.
Okay, if you could get that for me, and the rates. When was the last time the rates changed?
They haven't changed since, certainly since I came on board last July. And I don't think there's any plans on changing them at this point. Are you talking about the monthly rates or the hourly rates?
Hourly, monthly, whatever.
None of the hourly rates have changed, to
Well,
the best of my knowledge.
can we find out the last time that they were raised? Parking meter stuff wasn't raised since 2009. And so I'm trying to see what I think they were raised a few years back, as I recall, but I'm not positive. Which would bring us to a whole nother discussion as to whether we're trying to drive people into the garages for parking, or are we trying to keep them on the street? And if so, what's the most efficient way to do that? I mean, if you can get large contracts like you're doing here, that's one thing, but, those are my questions on that.
So this question doesn't neatly fall into this one, but it doesn't really fall in anywhere. There are time periods when we don't enforce parking on the street, even though we pretend that we are. And I guess a lot of people know that. It's somewhat of an open secret. And is there any thought to just having some kind of staggered times or occasional, just so people are kept honest on that?
Yeah, I mean, The parking checkers are, yeah, it doesn't fit neatly into parking garages because parking checkers work for their employees at the police department. But yes, and one of the recommendations that is in the parking study is if you say that you have to pay for parking on Saturdays from, or weekdays from 9 to 6, then that's when you should be enforcing parking. And so that's one of the recommendations in the study, and something that we'd like to change once we have our overall plan in place for parking. Yeah. You just shared the worst kept secret in Syracuse, though, for the 4 people watching. You didn't know that? Oh, and Lori.
Other questions?
I mean, for what it's worth, we look forward once we have more of a firm plan in place, sharing it with the council and getting your feedback on our steps moving forward.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.